Hannah declares that her heart is lifted up in the Lord. In her previous prayer, she was greatly distressed, praying from an oppressive spirit, pouring out her soul in anguish, because the Lord answered her prayer in a revealed manner. He brought boundless holy joy to her. She says that her horn is exalted in the Lord. The horn is a biblical idiom for strength and power, taken from the ox whose strength is in his horns. To lift up one's horn on high is to offer a challenge to boast or to take pride. Hannah feels vindicated after her many years of suffering the taunts of Peninnah. The Lord has lifted her horn, restored her dignity, and strengthened her heart. Therefore, she feels confident to speak boldly against her enemies, namely her rival. Hannah returns to the exalted horn image at the conclusion of her prayer, where she specifically identifies the exalted horn as a symbol for the anointed king. He will give strength to his king and will exalt the horn of his Messiah. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 10. The Messianic association alludes to the rise of the monarchy in Israel and the future reign of King Messiah. In synagogue liturgy, Horn of David is a title for the Messiah derived from Psalms 132 verse 17. I will cause the horn of David to spring forth. I have prepared a lamp for my Messiah. When the psalmist says, he has lifted up a horn for his people, Psalms 148 verse 14, the Davidic king is in view. The Messianic horn of David imagery is always closely tied to the salvation of the Lord. As in Hannah's prayer and the daily prayer of the Amida, we beseech God to send the Messiah, saying, may you cause the branch of David, your servant, to sprout forth quickly, whose horn will be raised with your salvation. Blessed are you, O Lord, who causes the horn of salvation to sprout forth. Hannah's exalted horn inspired the sages to detect an allusion to the rise of the Davidic dynasty. When Hannah's son Samuel anointed Saul as king, he poured out a flask of oil over his head. When he anointed David as king, he did not use a flask. Instead, he filled a horn with oil. Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 13. In so doing, he literally enacted the idiom of lifting a horn. The Talmud contrasts Saul's flask of oil with David's horn of oil. Hannah prophesied, my horn is exalted. She did not say, my flask is exalted. In these words, she signified that the kingdom of David and Solomon, who were anointed from a horn, would be lengthened like a horn. But the kingdoms of Saul and Jehu, who were both anointed from flasks, would not be lengthened. B. Megillah 14a. God is real. There is no one holy like the Lord. Indeed, there is no one beside you, nor is there any rock like our God. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2. Hannah's encounter with the Lord and his miraculous answer to her heartfelt prayer convinced her that God is real and there is none like him. She borrows language from the Torah, which says, who is like you among the gods, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness? Exodus chapter 15, verse 11. There is none like the God of Jeshurun. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 26. Having just experienced God's just interaction in her life, she alludes to the Song of Moses, which says, the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are just. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 4. And the rock is not like your rock. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 31. Hannah declares, there is no one beside you. Literally, the Hebrew says, there is not except you. The mystics often quote this declaration to teach that nothing in the universe exists independent of God's sustaining being. All creation is as if it is not. Aside from God, there is nothing. The Talmud makes a similar observation, reading the Hebrew to say, there is none to survive you. There is no one beside you. Rabbi Yehuda ben Manahiah said, do not read beside you. Read it as, there is no one to survive you. For the measure of the Holy One, blessed be he, is not like the measure of flesh and blood. It is the measure of flesh and blood to be survived by the words of his hands. But the Holy One, blessed be he, survives the works of his hands. B. Megillah 14a. A second homiletic emendation relates Hannah's words to the miracle of childbirth by reading the Hebrew to say, "Nor is there any artisan like our God, nor is there any rock like our God." Read it as, "Nor is there any artisan like our God." A man can draw a figure on a wall, but he is not able to give it breath and spirit, nor inward parts and living organs. But the Holy One, blessed be He, fashions a form within a form and gives it breath and spirit, inward parts and living organs. B. Megillah 14a. Humbling the proud. Boast no more so proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and with Him actions are weighed. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 3. The Lord lowers the haughty and lifts up the lowly. The Lord silenced Peninnah's arrogant boast and taunts against Hannah. Hannah says, "Boast no more so very proudly. Do not let arrogance come out of your mouth." Hannah predicts, even the barren gives birth to 7. Chapter 2, verse 5. But Peninnah, the mother of many children, will languish. Hannah did not have 7 children, though. The Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 21. If that number includes Samuel, that makes a total of 5 children. Rosh cites a teaching to explain the discrepancy. It came to pass that each time Hannah bore a child, 2 of Peninnah's children died. After Hannah had her 4th, only 2 of Peninnah's children survived. Peninnah begged Hannah to pray that her last 2 children might be spared. Hannah did so, and the children survived. Therefore, the last of Peninnah's children are reckoned to Hannah, bringing her to a total of 7. He makes the barren woman abide in the house as a joyful mother of children. Psalms 113, verse 9. The Lord knows what is in the heart of man. With Him actions are weighed. He weighs man's deeds as if in a scale. He avenges the victims of aggression, shattering the bows of the mighty, strengthening the feeble. He reverses the fortunes of the wealthy and the poor, sending the wealthy out to work for bread and satiating the hungry. The Master alludes to Hannah's song when he says, "Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be satisfied. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you shall be hungry." Luke chapter 6, verses 21 and verse 25. The Song of Miriam echoes the same theme of divine reversal and even quotes a line from 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 5. He has scattered those who were proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones and has exalted those who were humble. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent away the rich empty-handed. Luke chapter 1, verses 51 through 53. In Miriam's song, the mother of our Master goes on to apply all of these divine reversals to the prophetic future of the nation of Israel. He has given help to Israel, His servant, to Abraham and his descendants forever. She says, Luke chapter 1, verses 54 through 55. Likewise, traditional Jewish interpretation applies each of Anna's divine reversals to the nation. God silenced the boasting of Nebuchadnezzar and repaid him for his arrogance. He shattered the bow of the Syrian Greeks and strengthened the feeble Maccabees. He makes the barren woman a glad mother of 7 children, alluding to the Messianic redemption when barren. Widowed Jerusalem will be suddenly filled with her children, but wicked Rome will be uninhabited. Death and life. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 6. The Lord who reverses fortunes makes men poor or rich, lowers and exalts, kills and makes alive. The word order, kills and makes alive, suggests the resurrection of the dead. For that reason, the second blessing of the Amidah incorporates these words of Hannah's song while speaking of the resurrection. You are a king who causes death and resurrects. The resurrection imagery continues as the Lord raises the poor from the dust. Chapter 2, verse 8, the Amidah says, He maintains His faithfulness to those who sleep in the dust. He resurrects those sleeping in the dust and gives them a seat of honor with the nobles of Israel, the righteous pillars of the earth. Then they will recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. Makes poor and rich. The Lord makes poor and rich. He brings low. He also exalts. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 7. The Lord is the one who allots a person wealth, success, and prestige. He can make the poor rich and the rich poor. It is easier for the rich to become poor than for the poor to become rich, but when God wills it, even that happens. A certain Roman matron asked Rabbi Shimon ben Chafai, "What has your God been doing since he created the world up until now?" Ben Chafai replied, "He sits and builds ladders on which B elevates one man and lowers another, saying, so and so who was rich shall become poor, and so who was poor shall become rich." As it says in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 7, he brings low, he also exalts. In view of God's hand in a man's success or failure, the wealthy should not be complacent or haughty. Instead, they should be poor in spirit, adopting the humble attitude and manner of a poor man, as our Master says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. Likewise, the poor should not despair. The Lord will provide for them, and he can reverse their circumstance. They too are possessors of the kingdom. Did not God choose the poor of this world to be rich in faith, and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? James chapter 2, verse 5. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Luke chapter 6, verse 20. Divine reversal in the patriarchs. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8. Hannah speaks of God as one who has mercy upon the downtrodden, lifting the poor up from the dust and ashes. Anyone who has seen extreme poverty in third world nations has seen the poorest of the poor sitting in the dust of the street and famished, children sifting through the ashes of yesterday's garbage fires, seeking some morsel of piece of usable charcoal. The Lord lifts even these, reversing their circumstances and giving them a seat of honor at the table of patriarchs. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8 alludes to the patriarchs. Hannah says, "The pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he sets the world on them." Jewish tradition identifies the pillars of the earth as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When the forefathers came and provided themselves righteous, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, "Upon these pillars I will establish my world." Hannah says, "He keeps the feet of his godly ones, but the wicked ones are silenced in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail." Chapter 2, verse 9. The Ketiv, written form of his godly ones, is singular. His godly one, Hasidio. This is to hint that the world may exist in the merit of one Zadok. The following passage of the Talmud discusses the point. Rabbi Eliezer explained, this world would have been created even for the sake of a single righteous man. The Holy One, blessed be he, saw that the righteous are but few. Therefore he planted them throughout all generations, as it is said in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8, "The pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them." Rabbi Chia ben Abba said also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, "This world will endure, even for the sake of a single righteous man," as it is said in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 25. The righteous has an everlasting foundation. Rabbi Chia himself infers this from 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 9. He keeps the feet of his godly ones. Does not godly ones imply many? Rabbi Nachman ben Yeshach said, "It is written in the singular, his godly one." B. Yoma 38b.